welcome back to another trip back in time, where today we're going all the way back to 2021, when of course around December of the year prior I had started designing Wave 2 of the custom set showcase, and just a couple of months into that lovely second year of quarantine, we found our way into the midst of the next 13 odd sets in the custom set showcase. Now, it's been a while, many of you may have forgotten or maybe haven't even seen the older videos. They are a little bit hard to stomach. However, if you want to check out any of the things featured in today's video in much more detail, as a lot more thought goes into them, as you will see than what I show you today, I recommend you go checking out the playlist that is linked above. However, without any further ado, let's get straight into revisiting the next batch of customs. This, of course, includes everything from Z013 all the way up to 28. More specifically, including stuff like the Hylian Shield, the Castle Sanctum, which many of you will have seen, and other favourites like Monkman's Kosher and the Castle Wall Defence. Not to mention some smaller things that have definitely been forgotten to time. So going through them one by one, of course, will be the main priority of today. This is 16 sets covering 5 games this time instead of 6, but including 65 minifigures and over 11,000 pieces, bringing our total to 11,427 just for these 16 sets, not including the 4,000 from the first wave or so. And this is largely down to just one absolutely giant 18 plus set. In fact, the first 18 plus set that was introduced to the lineup. Here you can see, of course, all the sets laid out together we'll be taking a look at, as well as this wave's movie-style poster, highlighting some of my favourite figures that came out of this wave of 65 and this wave 2, which, to be honest, I have a very special place for Wave 2 in my heart. Wave 1, of course, the most nostalgic, the original. Wave 2, to me, is probably my overall favourite, and that includes it having some absolute duds. So, let's start off strong with Z013. This is Sheikah accessory pack from Breath of the Wild, and this actually launched before Wave 1 even finished, and that's purely because halfway through its development, its original lineup changed. This set was originally going to include Old Impa, Old Pura, Old Robbie, and then a Sheikah warrior to round out the Sheikah tribe, and the whole impetus of this was to include Terrako. And then, after I'd drawn these figures, a new trailer came out, and that revealed the younger cast. So there are 2 versions of this set that exist. Obviously, only one would have come to shelf. I can't decide which one, so here's the other one, with young Impa, Pura, Robbie, the Sheikah warrior, and then, of course, the Terrako build, making this one of the smaller accessory packs, but an interesting one for where its development sat. If we hadn't have ever got an Age of Calamity, we would have only ever got the original set, and I think we would have been worse off for it, because the younger versions of these characters are pretty iconic, and of course Terrako is a great inclusion. In the original set, before Age of Calamity even existed, right, like when I was drafting this wave, there was no plans at all to make, I hadn't decided what the build was going to be, so it was great that this game came along to give us some more inspiration along that line. Next up, Z014, the Zelda Advent Calendar. This was my Christmas release and the first of 2 Advent Calendars that I've completed based in this universe, following in the style of Marvel, Harry Potter and Star Wars before it. Here you can see, of course, there was a variety of micro builds as well as some figures, and taking a look at everything on the screen, we're going to zoom through. You've got a variety of Hyrule Castle builds, including a throne and a table stacked to the brim with food. You've got Ganon's organ from his castle at the end of the game, a potion shop from a variety of places, a training dummy from Twilight Princess's opening, however dressed up in a top hat as if Christmassy. You've got a little section of wildlife along with a Navi or other fairy. You've got a Korok puzzle split over 2 days, and the Korok statue has a beanie. You've got a cooking pot from Breath of the Wild. You've got the Master Cycle Zero spread over 2 days. You've got a Sheikah torch to light the blue flame, as well as a Sheikah tower done in micro scale. You've got a build of Majora's Mask Moon, as well as the telescope from the Astral Observatory looking up, a Christmas tree themed with the Divine Beast emblems and spirit orbs, and then of course 3 sections of the Hateno housing, of course being Link's house, one of which would have the champion portrait above a chest of drawers with a silent princess on it. The second one is a fireplace with a Sheikah slate on it, and then the third one is a window with the obligatory wreath. And that wasn't all, because of course it includes a variety of character builds. We had a Choo-Choo from Wind Waker wrapped up in Christmas lights, a Terrako with a Christmas hat, just a normal red bokoblin, and then of course Christmas variants of Link, Zelda and Ganondorf, each with their respective pieces of a Triforce in a present box. Gingerbread Link, really niche but funny inclusion. Christmas sweater Zelda, including the 4 Sheikah runes in a pixel art style. And then of course you have Santa Ganondorf, who has been reluctantly dressed up into present delivery. Next up, Z015, Monk Kosha's final trial, also from Breath of the Wild. This one's pretty famous here on the channel, and one of the first ones to be turned into real life. He's a giant minifigure version of the Monk Kosha battle, where he enlarges himself and like smashes things. He's the only, well, one of very few candidates to be turned into a large-scale figure across the franchise, and I really enjoy this style of building. I think he looks absolutely great, has a large amount of posability, and has the giant spike balls, which of course he could throw at Link as he tilts the giant table. Also included in the set was a smaller version of the monk, so he can do his clone thing. You've also got a custom version of a motorcycle frame for the Master Cycle Zero, as well as this set included Link's climbing gear for the first of 2 sets across the custom set showcase so far. Next up, that brings us to Z0016, the Hylian Shield from across the series, of course, more specifically based on the later appearances once they'd actually decided on design. As you can see, this was actually the first 18 plus branded set for this, the whole custom set showcase actually, and looking back retrospectively, it's still pretty much the only one from Wave 2. However, there's a later set which probably in hindsight of years since and seeing what Star Wars has done with dioramas, we'd probably brand under 18 plus if we had made the set today. But either way, this one has 5,532 pieces, making it the biggest custom I've ever done, full stop, for this showcase anyway. And it is, of course, the Hylian Shield as a wall mount. I don't believe they do the sword, so here's the next most iconic piece. Now, what was another thing that was interesting about this build is that inside the box you had a load of smaller boxes built in a similar way to the Bugatti or the Lamborghini Sian. Each one had a quote, such as about the Triforce, or about the shield, or about just iconic quotes, and they'd all make up an artsy image of the shield on the front. Just an extra detail that loads of people never thought about and forget about, so I thought I'd bring it up again. In here, of course, the shield is just absolutely ginormous. It's something like 50 centimeters across. It is a life-size shield. Of course, unstructurally tested, so we have no idea how it would perform in real life. However, here you can see that its thickness is the height of a figure, which is terrifying. It has all the iconic details, comes with a statue of Hylia figure, and this is roughly what it would look like if it was on a wall. You can see it here next to my Trojan Horse custom and, of course, the Haunted House from 2020. Next up, Z0017, the Var Meadow Microfighter, also from Breath of the Wild, coming of course with a Rivali figure. You can see that this is designed in the same style as the Star Wars Microfighters, has a load of details on all the sides, and it has a largely dark tan colour scheme, which of course means it's probably not yet buildable in real life. It replicates the most important details, such as the windows on his belly, the hole windows where you obviously go inside to do the terminals, the wings, and of course the central terminal on his head, as well as the head shape in itself. It also includes a little hole in the middle to seat Rivali in. And this was followed up by Z018, the Varminoboros Microfighter, only releasing 2 in Wave 2, the other 2 would follow in Wave 3, and this one of course representing the cam. You can see the hole where you'd enter in the side, as well as the legs, which can actually pose backwards and forwards to simulate just a little bit of movement. You've got the 2 humps, a little bit of neck articulation, and 3 prints up on the headpiece, or a new piece, depending, to represent the 6 eyes of this beast. The shaping's actually pretty good on this one. Again, though, dark tan coloration limits how buildable this is in real life. However, this is a proof of concept. You've also, once again, got the hole to sit Urbosa in, and here you can see Rivali from 17, and then Urbosa from 18, with their relevant weapons such as the Great Eagle Bow, the Scimitar of the 7, and the Daybreaker Shield. Urbosa also has a printed cloth element, a brand new hairpiece, and of course looks accurate to the game. Probably the only thing we'd change, of course, is the eyes not being in the right style, and Rivali is actually using, well, a modified version of the Chima headpiece as a base for his new head, and has some epaulets as well, just to round out his design. His bow is actually very similar to one from an Overwatch set. Z019 brought us Spirit Train Adventure from Spirit Tracks, the first of the sequel Wind Waker sets to get some love, and this one had 882 pieces, as well as a nice selection of figures from Spirit Tracks, pretty much every figure you'd ever need from Spirit Tracks, and it came with obviously the train, the demon trains which follow you around on the tracks, and of course track and a station build so that you can actually have an adventure on the rails. The train itself came with the engine as well as a cargo container, because of course there are lots of cargo missions in the game. This is also a nice easy place for people to store figures and other stuff just to carry it around, as kids do. There's also a caboose car with seats inside where you can have your meetings as happens in the game, or fights. And then you've also got the cannon car, which had one of the big launchers in it so that you could shoot things really fast with a big gun, which is always exciting. And more importantly, I think it came with a selection of figures such as Chancellor Cole with a new minifigure head which actually has 2 studs at the top. This would be reused later on. We've also got Andrew, whose body is a train, one eye closed and a new headpiece, but some interesting recolours and prints on his Choo-Choo build. You've also got Conductor Link, which is the more iconic outfit from this game in particular, with a new hat piece in his head as well as mid-legs. And then of course you have Burn, who is a main villain from the game, using the Unigami headpiece as well as the ninja mask, has some interesting cog printing and designs on him, and then of course Toon Zelda specifically from Spirit Tracks with a newer headpiece, and is using the Hermione style brick based bottom with a brick and a plate stacked on top with some print, and then just some normal dual molded arms. Bringing us into the 20s with Z0020, the Zalfos Battle Pack from Breath of the Wild. This is of course the second installment in the Battle Pack trope, which we started in Wave 1 with the Bokoblin Battle Pack. This one, of course, is based around the more aquatic lizard bases seen across Breath of the Wild in the Master Sword Trials, and also more specifically in the Lanayru province. It's made up of a load of rearrangeable connections, and if you buy multiple sets, it's my favourite Battle Pack because when you buy 8 of them, you can build a base that's actually more complicated, building up the huts and all of the little bridges all over the place. Of course, the draw for most people is the minifigures, but I do love it when the build of a Battle Pack is also equally massable, and you get one of each of the major colours from the game here, which is potentially a little bit of a weird ratio, but it means you get your normal green ones, you get fire, ice and electric variants too, all with their various colours and decorations. Next up for 21, you've got the Blight Gannons. This is a 4-in-1 build from Breath of the Wild where you get to build one of the 4 Blights, and if you buy 4 copies or rearrange your existing one, you can recreate either thunder, fire, wind or water using pieces and having a small selection left over. They're pretty good but pretty bad for the scale, but I definitely think they're all recognisable. I spent a lot of time on their faces trying to work things out just to be as good as possible. It's a really creative concept that I hope to see replicated one day. Next up for 22, we had Ganondorf's Horseback Duel. This was what I meant when I said this would probably be an 18 plus set and done completely differently. I wanted to try kinetic sculpture and also make this iconic scene, however to make it more interesting I needed to be changing it up just ever so slightly. Therefore these figures are on platforms which can pulsate upwards and downwards, leading to the simulation that the characters are riding through a landscape as if on horseback. Of course, as you can see here, the platforms go up and down, and that is about it. There's a cam mechanism on the inside and a logo. Definitely the least favourite set, pretty much ever. You get the 3 good minifigures though, and this is the main draw to the set. Of course, the Twilight Princess Link, but there are other ways to get him. The Twilight Princess Zelda and Ganondorf though have both remained exclusive to this set so far, and I love the way the detailing on Ganondorf's torso in particular has turned out. You also of course get 2 horses, Ganondorf's steed and then the TP opponent. Next up for 23, we have the Ice Battle Pack, the weakest battle pack again from the lineup. See what I mean when I said that this wave definitely has some bad ones. Included of course is a variety of ice themed enemies, mostly from Twilight Princess, however some Ocarina of Time representation in the form of Ice Keys and the OOT Freezard. You've also got 2 Chilfoses, a cannon, mini Freezards and a big Freezard, all from the Snow Peak Manor region of Twilight Princess. A really nice eclectic mix of characters. I specifically want to credit Leozora for the Chilfos build, however the Freezards are my favourite, specifically the OOT one and the mini ones from TP. Here you can see them up close, of course. The OOT one looks perfect in my eyes. The big one has a printed 1x2 transparent brick, and then of course the Chilfoses are skeletons, all in white using the Wither skeleton legs, one of my favourite pieces to use for taller customs, but not the avatar legs. And then of course the mini Freezies as well, with a minifigure head printed with an eye inside a transparent dome. Next up for 24, the Hyrule Castle Sanctum. This was supposed to be the big one, however had a story of disappointment. However, later on when we hit 100 subs, I remade it and made it much better. So this one actually has a load more pieces in it and made it look a lot better. You can actually combine this fully detailed castle replica of the Sanctum with a second copy to make a double thickness one that looks so much better. And on the inside, of course, you have a fully replicated Sanctum complete with stairs, the Ganon Bulge and a throne for Rome at the top, as well as some details like pendants and so on. Up high, you could even drop Ganon out of the egg through the floor to the observatory below. You had a Corapuzzel at the top, as well as the bell and a lookout post where you would watch. A lot of space was given to the Ganon feature, however I think it was more than worth it. A pretty epic playset with some details that I'd highly recommend you checking out, and has nothing to do with the larger Castle Sanctum that one day I will have to build for my even bigger Hyrule Castle mock. However, that's a story for another day. Of course, the figures included again are another highlight here. Not only do we have Zelda's royal dress from the flashbacks, a new unique combination of Breath of the Wild's Hylian hood and Champion's tunic, the royal guards, which are some of my favourite outfits from the game, and King Rome, but we also have a brickbuilt Calamity Ganon, which took ages to design, and then also Misko the Bandit, who is a character we never see, who has a fan request and was actually pushed into the showcase by popular suggestion. He also includes the EX DLC chest and of course a copy of the Rumour Mill, which of course he helps to fund, as he's the main problem with the DLC, I'd say. With 25, of course, this was the Shadow Temple, the one I was infamous for hating wanting to do, and despite some pretty bad box art on my part, this is probably my favourite custom just ever, not excluding the nostalgia behind Fire Sanctuary. Within the set, of course, the main gimmick is you get a load of different roller coaster track pieces to expand your dungeon layout, to expand on the Wave 1 sets that have come before and all the sets that have come since, and this allows you to make custom track layouts such as what's seen above to connect different rooms all over the place, and it really helped to make the dungeons feel like a less linear and more 3D experience, not only by adding the ability to go left and right, but also curves, potentially angles, and you can even change directions using the scythe spinning table in the middle. A couple of the other rooms that you'd see across the build is you have a room where you fight Dead Hand, so very similar to the bottom of the well. You've got a claw for Link to fall in, and then that would actually leave the floor to lift up, revealing Dead Hand underneath. You've also got the Green Poisonous Swamp, which is only commonly sighted in the bottom of the well, as well as a load of his claws sticking out the ground. You've also got this room where a Wall Master would drop on you if you flick a lever, as well as a bubble would go backwards and forwards, so the whole point is to skip past the bubble here. You've also got a room where the Redeads burst out of the sarcophagus, and you can actually see the key to the boss hanging from a skeleton arm in the middle. That's if you don't get petrified in time. You also have a section where you have to trust the Eye of Sight and walk through the wall. That it literally works as it's a pushable wall segment that pushes backwards. You also get the Boat of the Dead, which is built around a roller coaster car and sits along all of the different tracks. And then finally, behind the locked boss door, you have a fight with Bongo Bongo, whose arms can go up and down. You get the Shadow Medallion, and you can actually chop off all of his fingers to simulate damaging the boss before spinning the eye around backwards to represent its defeated form. And here are all those figures up close. Of course, Bongo Bongo looks so much better when he's no longer attached to a floating stick. The Wall Master looks eerily creepy. The Redead is potentially my favourite Wave 2 figure. Dead Hand looks terrifying in figure form. The Cursed Bubble and the Stalfos look also amazing. And then, of course, you've got the same variant of TP Link, except for this time he's got the scared facial expression. Number 26 was the Prince Rallis Wagon Escort, another fan favourite from Twilight Princess. Here, of course, this build is centred around the Rallis Escort mission, so you have Telma's wagon attached to a horse, as well as a bublin. Now, you can actually simulate the fire breaking out of the wagon's roof, and you've got a bed inside to put Rallis on, but the main play feature here, of course, is putting out the fire, or breaking the fire out. And actually, if we did this set today, the Bublin Archer would probably come with the Avatar bow piece with the arrow piece in red to simulate fire, and here is actually the Bublin that he can ride. Also, did I say Bulbo? He's the Bublin. The Bulbo looks great. I really love the way he came out as a steed. He's got 2 eye prints as well as some tusks. His head can rotate and his legs can move backwards and forwards too. Of course, 4 figures were included here: Telma, Rallis, the Bublin Archer, and then TP Link. Rallis, of course, using a new headpiece. More specifically, this will be used over and over again whenever we get to doing more Zora sets, and the Bublin actually makes a reappearance from Wave 1. And of course, later on down the line in Wave 3, we haven't gotten to that part yet, there'd be a second CMF series to include Ilya, who would complete the Wagon Escort trio and actually expand upon your existing set. Just couldn't include them all here. Number 27, and on our last proper set, would be the Castle Wall Defense, which is designed to be the castle expansion for this wave to get your castle on the growth. It consists of a tower segment and a wall segment and is designed to be largely massable and replicatable, acting as a larger scale battle pack. This means that when combined with the Sanctum, and of course the more variation that would be spotted in later waves of the custom set, you end up with a pretty impressive castle layout that the longer you wait, the more varied it will get. Just trust me on this, by the time we get to Wave 5, this thing's going to look a lot better. Of course, the figures are another draw. If the set's massable, no named characters were included. This means that in this set you get a brick-built moblin who is twice the size of a bokoblin, so we could throw them, 2 red bokoblins, a silver bokoblin, and 2 soldiers to fill out your castle, and Sanctum, of course, because if you're buying more than one, it's going to be an impressive army that you need to defend against the monsters. However, later on down the line, the moblin received some justified criticism, so I also designed a figure version in my remastered figures video using the exact same headpiece but on a figure body to see what he would look like at figure scale. I'll leave the verdict up to you guys, but as long as I've got the headpiece, that's perfectly fine for my needs, because that's the important part for a big change that's coming very soon. And then Z028 was the last custom of the wave, which is the SDCC Dark Link. This was designed to be the Zelda equivalent of the San Diego Comic-Con sweepstake figures that they used to do back in the days. Haven't done it for a while now, however back when this came out they were still doing them. This of course would be, given it was COVID times, would be a sweepstake entry to buy the figure based on lego.com, and only a select few would get him, and everyone would be really mad about it because it's such a cool figure and a beloved character. This is a hybrid between the OOT and the Breath of the Wild versions of the armor, and then of course the character, because the OOT one doesn't have much in the way of detail. And actually, that brings us to the end of the sets. However, there of course is a couple of overview images to take a look at. This is the state of the custom dungeon at the end of Wave 2. You can see how much the Shadow Temple really improves the depth, and how the mix and matching of rooms starts to complement and create a unique challenge for different players. This of course only gets more and more special the longer this goes on. And all the sets together, of course, look like this, all stacked up with the absolutely giant Hylian Shield box, which is the same size as the Titanic, except for half of the depth in backwards, because it's only half the pieces. The Sanctum, of course, is the next biggest, and you can see everything stacked up here, including the polybag and the accessory pack. And here you can see them all on that same lovely store shelf as before. You've got the Castle Sanctum in the big case this time instead of the Octo, and we're advertising the Sweepstake Dark Link in the other one as well. You can see a variety of different things, including stuff like the Advent Calendar, and I believe the only one missing here is of course 29, which is the one that comes next, and has actually been retconned out of Wave 2 since back in the day. And of course, very blurry image here. It's very, very zoomed out with most of the sets here together. So Shadow Temple, the expanded Lizalfos Battle Pack, the Spirit Train coming around the back of also the really, really large castle, and then a couple of other builds like the Divine Beasts 2. But more importantly, and one of my favourite images, is the Wave 2 all characters image. So this is all the characters that we've taken a look at today across the Wave 2 sets. Everyone from the Demon Train to the Blights to the Freezards, all the way up to Calamity Ganon and King Rome in the back too. And Digilink's on here as well, but we won't talk about him for a little while for those of you that don't know anything about him. However, when we combine that with Wave 1 as well, here is the Wave 1 and Wave 2 characters all together, a little bit clipped off on the left just to make it less distorted. But you can see we've already got a crowd, right? Like, this is a party that you would want to go to. But that actually finishes it for today. Let me know your favourite set from Wave 2, as well as what you thought about this one. Is this wave your favourite, or is Wave 1 still beating it out? Lots of interesting things to take a look at, and of course, we'll be back with new Wave 4 customs very soon, new castle updates, and then eventually we'll get around to a Wave 3 update the closer we get to Tears of the Kingdom. And I will see you very soon. Bye-bye.